Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you wanna get the info that'll help you throughout your life, yeah.
Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Boomer Beat. And of course, I'm your host, Beverly Mahone. And today we are talking about finding love again. Yes, you can find love after 50. I'm a witness. I wasn't quite 50, I was like in my late 40s, but I had been married for 17 years the first time around and divorced. And then found love again. And I can say, like the song says, the second time around is better than the first time. It definitely is. And today, joining me is a friend of mine from high school who also has a story to tell. She's also looking for love and may have found love the second time around, too, just like me. Kathy, thank you so much for being a part of the program today to talk about finding love again. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about your backstory. You know, how long you had been married, kids, your careers, what?
Oh my goodness. Beverly, thank you for inviting me today. I mean, it is so wonderful that we've reconnected after so many years and share so much in common. So it's really
Yeah.
wonderful, and I appreciate your asking me to do this. We both grew up in Canton, Ohio, went to the same high school. I'm Jewish. Being Jewish has always been a very important part of my life, along with my parents and my kids, and my siblings. I went to the Ohio State University, which is where I met my first husband. We were married 38 years. And I have to say, most of which weren't very happy. They weren't terrible, but it certainly wasn't what I expected to have in my marriage. The best part was that we have two absolutely wonderful adult children now. I have a son who lives in San Diego, and my daughter lives in Toledo. And one is engaged, the other one is married, and I'm looking forward to grandchildren. And I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm working out. I lost my job. I was terminated due to COVID in April, and I have found my voice in my volunteer world, which is how you and I reconnected again on Black-white relations and all that. I pretty much, my career has been with the Jewish community. So having these conversations, having other Black-white conversations has just opened up a whole new world for me. And I'm grateful for everything I have.
Okay, but we're not talking about Black-white conversations today unless you're dating a Black man. So
I'm not. You got it.
we're going to talk about finding love. So, okay, so once you knew your marriage, your first marriage was over, did in the back of your mind you think, I think I might like to settle down again? Or was your mind going in a different direction? You wanted to explore more about you and live alone for a while so that you could establish some sense of independence?
That's a great question. It took me this 2 years that I moved out and have been separated from my husband. It took me that long to find myself. While I was still in my marriage, I was surfing the internet for men. I was so unhappy, and I've always wanted that partner in my life. And one of the reasons that I didn't leave much sooner was that I was scared of being alone and being independent. And even paying bills, because my father took care of it before my husband took care of it. And it has been 2 years of personal growth for me, but I knew that I always wanted to find the love of my life because I didn't have it.
And, I can relate to, well, I wasn't surfing the internet, but when I knew my marriage was coming to an end, I was calling an old boyfriend and just, having wonderful, friendly chats. Was nothing sexual about it, but, just feeling that I needed, to have someone to be able to talk to. And I was able to talk to him when we were dating. And I figured, well, I'll just talk to him again. So I do understand that portion of it. So as you move into now, I'm, thinking about getting back on the dating scene again. Where did you go? Did you look, you say you're Jewish, so I'm assuming you're specifically looking for someone of the Jewish faith. So was that in the synagogue? Was it online? Was it at a bar? Was it at the grocery store? How did you go about looking?
Okay, so Akron, Ohio has an extremely small Jewish population. And I would say, because of working professionally in this community for so long, I know the majority of the Jewish people in my community. I had an old boyfriend and we have stayed connected. He's married, so he's been a friend and somebody I could talk to. But I went online. I, in the past 2 years, joined 2 dating sites. I did not join a Jewish dating site, interestingly enough, because at that point, I was keeping my eyes open to anyone. I just needed to feel like I was desirable again. I just didn't feel that way for so long. And so going to online dating, I was able to have a lot of conversations with different men, some Jewish, some not Jewish, some Black, mostly white, I will say. And through the last 2 years, I realized that I wanted to find someone Jewish. I really did. It, culturally, my background, everything in my being is about Judaism. And not that I'm religious, it's a cultural thing. And I did have a boyfriend for 6 months who was not Jewish. And I found a lot more differences between us. And it wasn't just religious, it was our upbringing, it was our politics, it was the way we raised our children, it was the whole thing. And it made me realize that I really wanted to find somebody Jewish. So that's where I am.
Okay, and another thing we share in common, because my husband and I met online as well. And it took us a while to really, really connect because we lived in 2 different states. And then you've got that long distance travel and, the whole 9 yards. So, but in the end, it worked out. So how's it working out for you now? As far as,
in what way?
You found that chemistry? You found that connection?
I have been speaking with someone who lives out of state. The first boyfriend was 5.5 hours away. And that really was difficult. It was extremely difficult. And then COVID hit. And that was kind of the end of that relationship. This new person, we have spoken for many, many, many hours on the phone before we ever met. We did meet halfway several times, and there's a huge connection. I will just say he's a Jewish man. We have so much in common. He's a communicator. we both are in different phases of our lives and realize the opportunities that we have to not reinvent, but to move forward and to find our voices in a different way than we had in the past.
So let me ask that question, because you know, you say finding your voices in a different way. So thinking about your first husband to who you're dating with now, are there any qualities or attributes that you're looking for now that you didn't see in your first husband? Or basically you're looking for the same kind of individual?
Oh no, I'm definitely looking uh, for some different qualities. Probably the biggest thing was our lack of communication, and to me, that is the most important quality that a couple can have, is to be open and honest and communicate our feelings.
Okay,
I
come on now.
did.
That might be number 1.5. There's something else that's more important, but okay.
There is. What would that be? Communication is huge.
It is.
It is. And, I married an introvert and an old fashioned introvert, and he was not a big communicator. So most of our communication was about my profession, my work. He has been a volunteer in the Jewish community for many, many, many years, and is past president now of one of our Jewish agencies. So we've both been very involved, and we had that in common, and we had our kids in common. But it was also never, to me, a real partnership where we shared ideas, where we talked budget, where we wanted to fix up the house and talked about it together and prioritize. He didn't like to travel. I love to travel. We had a lot of commonalities, but we had a lot of differences in that way. And he never would open himself up to me. Where in my relationship now, we are extremely open. I'm an open book, and so is he. And I never had that. And even when we tried to repair our marriage, he wouldn't open himself up and become vulnerable, is what I say, vulnerable to the opportunity to figure out deep down what our issues were.
But you
So,
know, I think that that is the case with a lot of men, because men are taught to be hard, and they are taught to, you know, be firm and not to show a lot of vulnerability, as you say, or a lot of emotion, because they are the head of the household and they can't break.
right,
So women, on the other hand, I mean, well, you're a communications major, so of course you communicate. I'm a communications major. I communicate. I want you to talk to me. So when you
right.
find someone or you connect with someone that's not good at doing it, I do think that you can clash. But if the sex is good and the finances are okay, then I think maybe the communication can work itself out. That's just my.
Well, let's say that I always felt that my husband um, thought that being successful financially was going to make our marriage strong. And that's where I talked about old-fashioned responsibility and being old-fashioned. Not that he didn't want me to work. He absolutely did. And we made the decision for me to stay home. And we struggled for many years, till our kids went to school. And then I worked part-time, and then I started working full-time. But, he really thought that taking care of the finances was what it was all about. And, honest to God, I I can't remember how the sex was, to be very honest with you. Um, there was none for many years before I even left. we had separated so far from each other within our house, and sleeping in separate bedrooms for many, many, many years. I honestly can't remember. I'm sure it was fine, but I think if it was mind blowing, I would have remembered.
So let me ask this question. How important is that in your relationships moving forward? Is it a priority, or it's just important, but not really all that important because you have other priorities?
So it's interesting that you asked that, because I do feel it's very important. I think there has to be that physical attraction and chemistry, and there has to be that mental attraction and chemistry. Um, but I do believe that sex is not as important as the mental relationship and the connectedness. I also believe at my age, at our age, I'm 63 years old, that moving forward and having that life partner for hopefully at least the next 20 years or so, that the relationship is much more important than what we do in the bedroom. I love the intimacy. I think women do love that. I think the act of sex is wonderful, but I truly believe it's the intimacy and the hand holding and the loving and caring and kindness that is much more important than the physical act of sex. I don't think I would have said that 20 years ago.
Okay,
I
so
think I'm in a different time in my life now.
in a different space. How important are finances? Is he okay if you made more money than he does? How do you feel if he didn't have a job right now?
Are you talking about my ex
I'm
or
talking about your future.
my future? Wow. It's interesting because I'm not working, and my husband was successful, and I'm very grateful and fortunate that I don't have to worry about my finances. That's incredible and a huge comfort. Um, I don't think I want to remarry. I want a life partner. So I think it's less important maybe what the partner brings to it. But I also know I want to travel. I want to spend money traveling. And if I want to buy something, I want to buy something. I don't know how the other person will feel about that. Maybe they have more restrictions than I do. Um, I'm not a person who spends like crazy. I never have been. I'm a discount shopper. I like those bargains, even though I could probably shop at regular price, but it's just not my thing. Some of that was my husband's influence, without a doubt. He, as successful as he was, his family, his parents were never big spenders. So money always feels somewhat important. If my future partner can't afford to travel as much as I do, and it holds me back, maybe that's going to be an issue. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right. So one final question as we get ready to wrap up this edition of the Boomer Beat. What advice would you give to women in our age group when they're out looking for another significant other?
wow. Well, communication for sure. And I know, Beverly, you told me you and your husband are very opposite each other.
We are.
I like the fact that we have so much more in common. And I had a lot in common, like I said, with my husband. And I have a lot in common with this current potential relationship. But I think honesty, integrity are huge. And I think you learn about that over time. It's not something you're going to figure out meeting in a bar. I think you will see signals. You will hear what that person has to say and have a sense of how honest or how much integrity they have. I want to be an equal partner. I never felt I was an equal partner. And so I think that's important too. I want to be appreciated. I want to be flirtatious. I want that person to flirt with me and make me feel like I'm the most important person in this world. And I feel that way right now, which is incredible. And I never felt that way before.
Okay.
And life is too short. If you argue, make up and move on.
Yes.
I've held grudges in the past. I've had a very hard time letting go. And now I know, man, just drop it, move on, and love each other for the reason that you're together. That's it. And don't go to bed angry.
And there you have it. Okay, very good. I can't even add anything to that. So I just want to say, Kathy, thank you so very much for talking to me. And we'll have to catch up again, maybe in a year or so, to find out how that potential relationship has turned out. Okay.
I would be happy to do that with you anytime, Beverly. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, you're gonna do it. You're very welcome. Okay, so this is gonna do it for this edition of the Boomer Beat, Finding Love Again. Yes, you can. All right, guys. Until next time, be blessed. See ya.
Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life.